Hi guys. I know it's kind of really late or really early in the morning. I just came from seeing Black Panther. Okay, I hate the way this camera looks. I'm trying to see if I can fix it to make it look a little bit better. Hold on, sorry. Okay, let's see. Okay, I hate the way it looks, but whatever. Okay, so I just came from seeing Black Panther and I wanted to do a quick review. I really hate the way this looks. Hold on. Let's see this. Hmm. Okay, whatever. So, anyways, I just came from the movie and I'm not going to go into much detail about the movie, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give some concepts about certain things that I saw in the movie that I thought was really interesting. The first thing that I thought was really interesting was the guy Killmonger, like the protagonist, the antagonist, sorry, in the movie, Killmonger. What I thought where I thought in the movie they should have developed his character a lot more, because he had this rage in him for certain reasons. I'm not going to go into it, but I think that um, had they really, really, really gone into depth about or give some layer as to why he was driven by this rage, um, it would have been it would have been Academy Award winning. I'm not saying his acting was Academy Award winning, but the character and then his character and then in the overall movie would have made it like an award winning film. I think they played it safe in the movie and they didn't go into the layers as to why. They just gave hints as to why he was driven by this rage. And parts of me can identify with his rage. I have never in my life been an angry person. Never in my life been an angry person. And I am not an angry person. But when you get unjustly, not like not like the kind of violence that people experience daily, like, like not the kind of injustice where it's, two people fighting it out and, one person overpowers the other person and, one person ends up dead, or let's say it's a robbery and the other person then ends up dead, that kind of thing. He had this kind of collectivist rage inside of him, and I related to his rage. When you get put in programs like this, that is the most vile, wicked, unjust program, like the targeting program, and practically everyone who's put into these programs are innocent people. When you get put into a system and a program that is so evil, so diabolical, so wicked, in that movie, I said to myself, his character had more depth to it, I would have been better able to identify with his rage. Okay. I thought that his rage was justified. I thought that in the movie his rage was justified, but I thought that his character didn't have enough depth, you know, enough depth to have this kind of rage and then to do what he wanted to do in the movie. So I thought that was a little bit like, at odds. So that's something about the movie that I thought could have been developed. The other thing that I was thinking about when I saw this movie was about like destinies. And this is where, you know, I think the movie hit home, the what ifs in life, Like one of the things for me that's really difficult for me is I always ask myself, like, should I have come to the United States? If I didn't come to the United States, I have free education where I was born, and I came to the United States because my mother lived in the United States, okay? And I also have one line of my lineage is American, as in the United States American. Okay, so part of my bloodline is not 100% Caribbean. It's also because a lot of Caribbean people, because of slavery, have a connection to the United States. It was usually the Caribbean and the United States, right? So I have that connecting bloodline, but it's not through slavery. It was actually through I believe it was actually through either trade or the military. Okay? I think it could have been the military. But anyway, so part of me in the movie, when I saw the movie, I immediately thought about destinies. And when I left the movie theater, I immediately thought about Mansa, which means king, Mansa Musa. And I said to myself, I said, one of the mistake that Mansa Musa made, which led to the constant invasion of Africa, was because when he decided to convert the Malian kingdom to Islam, he went on a Hajj, and before he got to Mecca, he traveled, across the continent of Africa. If you know where Mali is, Mali's west, and you know where Saudi Arabia is. Saudi Arabia is in the east, okay, across from the Dead Sea in Africa. So he made the trek from West to East Africa. For those of you that think the Africans didn't transverse the northern part of Africa and it was, no, okay, no. But the point I was trying to make, I thought immediately of Mansa Musa. And Mansa Musa's, on his pilgrim to Mecca, what did he do? He gave out so much gold that he basically bankrupted the entire global economy for I think like 6 months because he gave out so much gold. And when I thought about the movie and what occurred after Mansa Musa did that, okay, even though it was going on to some degree prior, it was the subsequent consistent invasion of Africa, constant invasion of Africa. There were invasions before, and they were able to fight and they were able to defend themselves. But primarily because of Mansa Musa and his pilgrimage and giving out that amount of gold, alerted people in Europe and alerted people in the East, look, this is the kind of wealth that's in Africa. So when I left the movie theater, that's something that came to mind. And interestingly enough, it's an African tradition when you greet people and you have money, you shower them with money. Okay, in the West, it's derogatory. It's associated with things like stripping, but that didn't come from stripping. That's a very ancient African practice where when a person has money and they greet you or you greet them, they shower you with money. The problem with that is that culturally, it could be misunderstood, right? So, anyway, so I immediately thought about destinies and I thought, what would Africa's destiny have been had Mansa Musa not done what he did? And then it reminded me about certain things in the movie. The destiny of I thought about my own destiny. Should I have come to the United States? I didn't come into the United States to be treated like a fucking technological prisoner, all because I went to a business meeting and these people saw fit to steal my work. I didn't come to the United States for that. I didn't come to the United States to not excel and live a life that's like not successful. I did not do anything that I should be in this position today. Yet this is where I am. And, there's a lot of people who are like, look, you have to grab your destiny by the hand and go forward. But how do you grab your destiny by the hand when there's an invisible system that is there to enslave you and bring you down at every turn? Right? So one of the things in the movie that really struck me, okay, was about destinies and how certain decisions that people make absent of you can alter your destiny. And when you have your destiny in your control, it's important the kind of decision that you make can alter your destiny. Okay? So, one of the really interesting things about this movie is about decisions that alter destinies, whether that decision is made by people who are external to you and it directly impacts you, or a choice you have to make that can alter your own destiny. So that was one of the things that I got out about this movie, how decisions really impact a destiny. And I was thinking to myself, when I got out of there, I always think back to the two mistakes that I made, two mistakes that I accept responsibility for. The first mistake I made was befriending the friend that I had that was a fucking perp. And then the second decision that I made that altered my destiny was trusting someone that should never have been trusted. I make no bones about that. So that's something I got about out of the movie. Then the other thing that I got out of the movie was the duality. When you're put into a situation like this, when your destiny has been hijacked, okay, you're not in a situation like the average person who still have control of their destiny. Okay, when you're put into these programs, you have to fight like hell to get your destiny back into your hands. And even if you get 90% of it back, you're on a completely different timeline because you've lost so many years because of the shit that they've done to you, because, of the abuse. Like me, I could net publicly, they successfully publicly got the public to believe their lies. So whenever I go out in public, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't get insulted publicly. There isn't a day that goes by that I do not get insulted publicly. Why? Because of the hidden cameras in my home, the way certain family members treat me while they're watching. Um, like if I had family members, I'm not saying all of them, but if I had family members who were like genuine family members that would like, ignore them, we're on your side, the public would not react the way they do. But, I have family members who like they quietly side with these devils. Not all of them, I'm just saying some. They quietly side with these devils. So there's not a day that goes by where I don't get some hostility and evil, negative, derogatory treatment because of what they did. Okay, so that leads me to another aspect of the movie. And this movie has it reminds you a lot, not 100%, but the underpinnings of the movie, there's a lot of this program. It reminds you of how this program can alter a person's destiny when technology falls into the wrong hands, or the potential of technology falling into the wrong hands, and how evil, when it gets control of a technology, how evil always tries to make itself look good and always make good look evil. So that's another concept in the movie. When there's a line of demarcation in this movie, the line of demarcation is this technology. Okay, in the life of a targeted individual, between who they should have been and who they can now be, the line of demarcation is this fucked up program with fucked up technology in the hands of fucked up people and demons. Okay, and the line of demarcation in this movie is this technology in the hands of people who understand it and know it and use it for good. It's safe. But in the hands of someone who justifies their rage and their way of thinking, it's a potential weapon that could destroy, and their greed, it's a potential weapon that could destroy a lot of people. So I thought that parallel in the movie was really, really interesting. I'm not seeing everything. I don't live my life through the lens of this fucked up program. But in this movie, technology was a major factor. And I couldn't take away from the fact that this technology that they use against victims, whether it's implants, nanotech, or some other type of technology, there's I can't even think, biosensors, body area networks, body area controllers. There's a whole gamut of this technology. Again, in the wrong hands, and all this technology that the United States military created for was under the scope of fighting so called terrorism. Okay? And it's not used to fight terrorism, it's used to imprison and enslave innocent people. That is a fact you know, and you see a parallel like that play out in the movie. So I thought that was really interesting about the movie. I thought it was really interesting that the line of demarcation is this technology and whether or not to share it with the world or keep it to yourself. Then there's another philosophical level that I thought was interesting. And I go back to myself. I should never have, I should have never trusted that man. I should have never trusted him. He was an agent, he was a spy. He was an agent and he was a spy. That is why he came to where we were. Okay, they sent someone who was a musician because they could not believe that a bunch of, and this is just facts, colored people would just be beating drums and dancing and enjoying themselves. I mean, this is what we do when no one's watching. So they sent this man. And that's what he is. Whether people believe me or not, I'm not saying all Caucasian people are like this, but I'm saying he is like this. You know, they sent him there. And one of the things that I was thinking about was another thing in the movie, a struggle for the king. One of the struggles was this technology can be used to help the world, but it can also be, it's so powerful that it can be used to destroy anyone. You understand? It can be used for good or it can be used for pure evil. It depends on the spirit of the person who's using it. And it reminded me of when I went to this person as a friend, you know what I mean? And trusted this person. And in retrospect, I look back and I said to myself, I understand this king not wanting to share. Rather, the world see them as a third world shithole. They rather take the risk of the world seeing them as a third world shithole than knowing that they had resources. Because what came out of my life subsequently after I went to see this man, I have no privacy. They steal my inventions from off my computer. I'm implanted. If they can't steal, and these people have no shame. If they can't steal it off my computer, they steal it right out my brain. I kid you not, because of these implants. They literally steal it right out my brain. That's to tell you how like disgusting these people are. Okay? And how really pitiful and disgusting they are. So that's another thing too. Part of me is like, I get the antagonist. Oh, I get him. I do not believe if you have an opportunity, I don't believe you let your enemies. I'm not talking about if you're in a gang warfare. I'm not down with that kind of stuff. I'm talking about unjust enemies. I mean, people who just rise up against you because they're filled with the devil and they believe that what's yours, they have some divine right to it. Okay? I'm talking about delusional people who believe that in order for them to succeed, you have to be 6 foot in the ground. I do not believe you let your enemies live. That's just what I do not believe that you physically, I do not believe in physical violence. Let me stress what I'm saying. I do not believe in physical violence. With that said, I don't believe that you should give your enemies a chance to destroy you. Okay? That's just me. And I'm stressing this again. I do not believe in physical violence. Okay? I do not believe in taking up a gun and shooting people. I do not believe in taking up any physical weapon and harming anyone physically. I do not believe that. But hastening their karmic destruction, that I agree with. Okay? Touching them physically? No. Hastening their karmic destruction? 100%. I agree with that. Okay? But not touching them physically. So, with that said, in this movie, what I thought was interesting was, the dichotomy. Part of me was like, I didn't really side 100% with the antagonist because I was like, he needed more depth to his character. They had to be more depth to his character, and then I could have sided with him. I didn't side with him just to side with him, but he had a good point. He had a very good point. Okay, he had a good point, but I just didn't side with his character because his character needed a little bit more depth. I agreed more in retrospect with the ruler of Wakanda, which is when you have something so powerful that, and you live in a world where they're economic henchmen and they're assassins, and you live in a world where they're colonizers, and you live in a world where there's such a thing as a targeting program. When you have a secret, keep it a secret as much as you can. Let it benefit you. Another way you could translate that is when you're doing good for yourself, no one needs to know. Look at my situation. I made one mistake by going to that business meeting, and these people, like a pack of marauding locusts, invaded my life, and I have absolutely no privacy. And they did it that way for a reason. They made sure I had no privacy for a reason. So that way they can rob and loot and plunder everything that I have, and then turn around and use their lying ass media to portray me as the criminal while they run away with my loot. When you're doing good for yourself, be like the Wakandans. Keep it to yourself and let the whole world think you're a third world degenerate country. You know, I was reading, I was reading about, and I'm not gonna criticize him. I'm not gonna criticize him. I was reading about this new African president who just got sworn in, Weah. And the first thing he did was change the constitution of Liberia. Now, Liberia is a country that was founded for free slaves. And in their constitution, it says that no one can own land unless they are Negro descent. They were black, okay? And I'm not making this about black and white, but I'm going to make a point. And I come from a country that is a very wealthy country. And after they slaughtered the indigenous black native Caribbean people who were Caribs and Arawaks, and they were black, okay? They weren't brown, they weren't light skinned, they were black people. After they slaughtered them, they brought in the Africans. Now, there were a very tiny group of Europeans, and I'm not making this about black and white. There's context that I'm trying to show here. After they brought in the blacks, there were two people, okay? There were the British who were left and the black Africans who were left, okay? When slavery was abolished, they brought in indentured laborers because the blacks were heading into the cities and building the cities. So they needed people to work on the agricultural land because the Africans tied the agricultural land to slavery. So they brought in Indians. Now, I'm not saying the country was perfect then, okay? Here's the point I'm making. He changed the laws. He made two changes. He got rid of a law that he said was racist, so now anyone can own land in Liberia. The second thing he did is that now anyone can become a citizen, I'm sorry, of Liberia. The second thing he did is that now there's a population of Middle Eastern people, and I'm not against Middle Eastern people. I'm making a point here. I'm making a point here. Okay, history repeats itself. I'm making a point here. And there's a Lebanese group of people that's in Liberia. Now, I come from a country, when I was growing up, the majority of the wealth was concentrated in the hands of Black people. And Indians were at the bottom rung of the ladder. Okay? Then the Indian people, okay, let me be honest with you. A lot of them got into, a lot of them, the majority of their wealth from illegal drugs and drug transshipment. This is just a fact. Okay? But at the turn of last century, when there was a Syrian war before this war, a lot of Syrians left Syria and came to Trinidad. Now, I'm making a point here because history repeats itself. Now, remember what I said to you. When the British left, a lot of the wealth was concentrated in the hands of Black people. Okay? Black people also also shared some of that wealth with the Indians who came from India. Okay? However, a lot of the wealth at the time that made the Indians from India wealthy was due to illegal drug trafficking. I mean, massive drug trafficking. This is just a fact. Then came another group, the Syrians. They were the poorest and they've been in the country the least. And they built their wealth on drug trafficking. And when they began to build their wealth off of all these illegal trades, they got into legitimate businesses. I'm just giving context, okay? And I'm going to go back to Wakanda in a second. They got into legal businesses. But the interesting thing is, they're the youngest group of people in the country. And today, do you know what they have done in less than 100 years? What they have done. A country that I grew up in where the majority of the power was in the hands of Black people is today in the hands of a minority people who have been in the country the least and have never done the hard work of building the country, whether it was during slavery, whether it was colonialization, whether it was post colonialization, they never did the work. How did they get it? They got in there through the illegal drug trafficking and all the other illicit trades. Then they went into the textile businesses, and the government, being equal, gave them the textile industry. And from that industry, they were able, and the money from the illegal drugs. Do you know who controls the country today? The minority group of Syrians. They control the politics. They control, and the politics is dirty as hell. Do you know that Blacks went from having the majority wealth in the country to the least wealth in the country? And when I saw that the president of Liberia, the first thing he did was looked at that law that said that land should only belong to, because this is their constitution, it was designed that when he says it's racist. I looked at that and I said, this man is making a serious mistake. Or it could be that the powers told him, we're going to make you president, get rid of these laws. It seems more like it's like that than it is anything else. Okay, what happened? The Syrians are in Trinidad for less than 100 years. The majority of the wealth in Trinidad is a damn goddamn rich country. Okay, it is a wealthy country. Most people don't know about it. But since they came into power, and their power is behind the scenes, these Syrian people, not in front of the scene, it's behind the scenes, okay? They control everything in that country. After them, it is the Indians who control everything. And the only thing that Black people control in Trinidad now is just politics. All the assets that they used to control, we no longer control. I'm just telling you facts. So it led me to think, if you think, because an African way of doing things is when I have some, it's Ubuntu. When I have something, it's important that everyone has something. But the problem with that is not every culture thinks like that. You see, this is why for me, even though I always tell racist Caucasian people, this is not your country, you stole it. But I said, being that you're here now and the system is yours and you're on this land and there's no way to get rid of you, when you say you want to protect your borders, you have every right to. The only time I tell them that, oh, hold up, it's when they say, this is my country. And I go, this is not your country. When you were dying, it was the real owner of this country, the Native Americans, who made sure you survived those winters when you were dying and made sure you had food. But being that the system is theirs and they live here now, or we live here now, you have every right to protect your borders. What you don't have the right to do is act like Europeans are indigenous to the United States, because they're not. That you don't have the right to do. But when you say you want to protect your borders, that's justifiable. It is justifiable. Why? Because I grew up in a country where I grew up in a country where I saw them. And let me tell you something, for those of you who think that Black people can't live in a country and there wasn't crime, when I was growing up in Trinidad, you could leave your doors open. Okay? Doesn't mean that we didn't have high level corruption. We did. We just didn't have low level corruption, like the kind of gun running and gangster warfare craziness that goes on there now. Okay? It's dangerous as hell there now. It wasn't like that. People didn't have guns when we were growing up. People were murdering each other left and right on the street. The crime was like, you could go look at the statistics in the 70s and 80s, and it began at 1990. And that's when it started to go downhill. Okay, so you could go look back and look at the statistics of when the country was predominantly controlled and the resources was controlled by Black people. For people who say, oh, Black people always live in a shithole, garbage. Okay, there was no crime. There was no crime. When the power shifted, and it shifted from predominantly Black people, and I'm just telling you facts, okay, to a Syrian minority, we have high level drug trafficking, we have kidnappings. This was unheard of when I was growing up. Kidnappings, not just kidnappings, I mean kidnappings and body snatchers, like the kind of body snatchers we hear about, where organ harvesting, that's the word I'm looking for. Body snatchers, organ harvesting. Then we have sex trafficking, then sex trafficking of children. We never had this when we were growing. When I heard, I was like, what? The point. I agree with the king. The king said, my job is to protect my people at all cost and to protect our main resource, okay? Which is, you'll find out when you watch the movie, okay? I agree with the king. When you have something, don't let the world tell you that if you have $1 million, you need to show you have $1 million. Be like the Wakandans. The whole world was like, oh, Wakanda, that third world dump. Meanwhile, the people were living like, do, 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 do. The people were living gloriously. Because when people find out that you have vibranium, okay, there'll be wars from within to overthrow you for your vibranium, and there'll be wars from without to come and steal you from your to steal your vibranium. And the differences between Hollywood movies, the protagonists always win. But in reality, when the economic henchmen, whether they're perps, whether they're racists, whether they're people with agendas, okay, whether they're enemies, when people find out that you have vibranium, okay, they will stop at nothing to get your vibranium. And this is, I wasn't making this about race. I wanted you to understand context of what I was saying. Like I said, for the United States have, they, we have, or the US government and the American people have to protect their borders. What I have a problem with, because I'm an indigenous American, okay? I'm not from here, there, and everywhere. Yes, all of those things are in my genes, but I am also indigenous to the Americans as well, okay? By blood, okay? So what I am saying is this, but I don't walk around with a card and be like this, you know, I'm like, let everyone live in peace. I agree that America needs to protect their borders. Why? Because you have vibranium. What I disagree with is when a European person or Caucasian person tells a person who has color, you don't belong here. I go, hold up. Europeans are not indigenous to the Americas. Okay? But with that said, yes, America needs to protect its borders because America has vibranium, right? Right. But on a micro level, lesson learned for me. It's a tough lesson that I live with every day. And every day I say to myself, if I could go back in time and not go to that meeting with that man and not befriend that one woman, my life would have been different. I would have had my vibranium and I would have protected my vibranium, and people would not, I would not be constantly at war with people hacking my system and stealing my hard work, violating my privacy like it's a joke. Every day I go outside, I get insulted. Every single day I go outside, I get insulted by ass wipes. Every day. Every day I go outside. Why? Because one man wanted my vibranium and stopped at nothing to get it. The other thing, the last and final thing is there's a specific way of identifying a person from Wakanda. When you go to see the movie, you'll understand. And what was interesting is what I got out of that is you never know on the other side who is a non-Wakandan. You understand? Because not everyone who can show their Wakandan passport, when you see the movie, you'll get it, is really a Wakandan. Some people are spies. Literally, some people are spies sent into your life to get your vibranium. All right? So, what's the moral of the story? Keep your vibranium a secret. The world doesn't need to know you have vibranium. And sometimes it's good for the world to think that you're a third world shithole than for them to believe that you got vibranium. All right? So have a great evening. It's 4 o'clock in the morning and I need to go get some rest. I wasn't trying to make this about race. I was showing you context of how groups of people have agendas. You understand? race is an aspect too, but if you get race, take race. Bob Marley said, who the cap fit, let him wear it. But if you get the context of what I'm saying, is when you have vibranium, do everything in your power to protect your goddamn vibranium, right? Peace out. Have a good night.